Hello, everybody. I'm very excited. I haven't done an interview in a while, and honestly, I missed the crap out of them. So I'm really excited to have
Mm.
Amanda Miller here, one of my great friends from a wonderful program that we were in together that just connected us, and that's amazing. So I'm really, really happy to have her on here. We're going to be talking about human design, which is something that I've been really personally curious about. And I feel like human design exploded onto this public sphere in the last 6 months in my personal life. I'm sure it's been around for a lot longer, but I've become aware of how everyone's talking about human design now. And I'm like, what is this miraculous thing? I know about astrology. I don't know what this is. And so I definitely wanted an expert to come and talk about it. And so I'm going to semi introduce Amanda, and she's going to continue her intro. But Amanda uses her life experiences, human design, and the education she's earned over the years to provide a path for others to ditch the made up rules and become the audacious individuals living a created and magical life that she believes we are here to be. Yes, fucking love that message. All right, I'm going to hand it over to you, and I would love to know your story. I want to know what you do. How did you get to doing what you're doing now? Like, what was your life trajectory to getting here? Take it
Oh
away.
gosh, that's a big question to ask somebody who
That is
has
true.
an undefined head and who's a little ADD. You're gonna
Whatever
get
you feel is most important.
um. So why don't I just kind of start with how I discovered human design, and I kind of
That
work
sounds
through that.
great. Yeah.
So I actually discovered human design, I want to say 3 years ago. Is that right? That's about right. Three and a half years ago. And it kind of randomly, actually, it was saw something about an ad it was a Facebook ad, did this webinar, and actually the woman that I found out about it from lives like an hour from me, which is just kind of wild. And I kind of fell down the rabbit hole because for me, it was like it uses some astrology, but it's like astrology on steroids times 10 because there's a lot
Yes.
more information. And what I got from it is that, oh, there is nothing wrong with me. There's a couple of things like
I
I'm a
love
2
that.
4, and the 2 is very hermity, and the 4 is all about your network and people. And I was like, oh, that's me. I've always felt like I'm this, I want to be around people, but no, I don't. I want to be around people, but now I need to not talk to anyone for a week. And I also felt as a 2, one of the things that is kind of defining about that line too is that we tend to be kind of naturally good at things. Not necessarily masters, but we pick things up almost like you did it before in another life. And so what ends up happening is that we often feel like we're not doing something right. We're not working hard enough. We're missing something because this was too easy. Especially when you hear people are like, this is so hard, and you pick it up and you're like, clearly I'm missing something because this was not hard. And like I said, there's a distinct difference between being good at something, kind of like, oh, I can do this, and being a master at it, right? Because being a master takes that extra work. So there were so many things. Like I have the undefined head, which it's been my anecdotal evidence. Again, this is not, I don't have a huge data set, but that those of us with an undefined head and an undefined ajna tend to be a little ADD prone. We're the ones that have like the 500 tabs open in our head because our head is open. And so there were things that was like, oh, okay, there's nothing wrong with me.
I love that. You're just special in your own unique way, right?
Yes. And what I have found going through other people's charts is that seems to be kind of a recurring reaction is like, there's nothing wrong with me. Like
It's so
all of these
gratifying.
things, right? It is. It's for me, I've had people cry like, oh, all of these things that I've been told my whole life that I should be doing it differently. The reason it didn't feel right and I felt like I was hitting a wall was because I'm not built that way. And it just gives a lot of validation for people. And I have a lot of individual circuitry, which then made sense because I've always been a little bit of a contrarian. Like, okay, that's the rule. Yeah, but why?
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
yeah. And my husband likes to say that I don't like rules, and that's not the case. I don't like rules that are dumb. I don't like
Mm.
rules that
Yes.
don't fit. And what I've discovered that for every rule, and you can even see this in science, there's always an exception. So
Mhm.
to hold to it dogmatically tries to create all of us to be cogs in a machine, like we're all the same, and we're not. And I think that's part of the reason that you see so much depression and anxiety and frustration in the world, is that people are trying to be something that they're not, but in their soul, they're it's like, ugh, why are you
Mm.
doing this to me? That's not who I am. And so you have this dissonance, and then people give up because they don't see a way forward. And so that's why I love human design.
Yes. That's so
Yeah.
powerful. I honestly, that's so affirming for every single one of us. And like in the same way that astrology is, but this also, like I'm sure this is a deeper version. So can you talk to us a little bit about how you use this in your practice and how you help other women that you coach kind of through human design and how it's different from astrology? And then maybe later we can talk about like how human design came about and who made it.
Yeah. So hold on a second. I had it and then it went. Um, the way I use it, so in human design, there's like a main foundation that if
Mm.
and so whether you come to me or go to anyone else, whoever that is going to get information about human design, you want to find somebody who's going to constantly bring you back to your strategy and authority. That is that's the thing. Like that's the foundation,
Strategy.
and all of the information that you get, because there's so much information, is all like secondary, because if you aren't living your strategy and authority, none of the rest of it will matter.
Mm.
So everyone has a strategy and authority based on their type and specific centers that are defined, which then defines what their authority is. So for example,
Mm.
I am a manifesting generator, which means I have a defined sacral and I have a motor connected to my throat.
Mm.
So, so as a generator, our strategy is to respond. So whether you're a not plain, pure generator or a manifesting generator, which makes up about 70% of the population, your strategy in life is to respond, to
Mm.
not force things, but it's to respond what's given to you. And I like to think of it is that life is bringing you a buffet,
Mm.
and it's coming up, and you've got this really fancy waiter that comes along and like, okay, here's what's next. Here's the next option in the buffet, and you have an opportunity to respond. And the
Mm.
response is yes or no. And like what you're doing right now, I'm guessing that you're probably a generator type, because that sacral response is guttural. When you
Mm.
think about it, it's low,
Can't help
it's womb, it's gut, and so the sounds are guttural. It's pre-verbal. It's mm-mm,
it.
mm-hmm,
Yes.
right? And so it doesn't always make sense. It's not often not logical, and so we have a tendency to override it. So to learn, first of all, how to hear that sacral response for the 70% who are generators, there are other types as well. It's a practice, because you have to override the conditioning that you've had your whole life. I mean, how many people have little toddlers who go, no, use your words. I did that.
Totally.
Use your
Absolutely.
words, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, but also being able to go, oh, okay, is this what you want? You can affirm it differently.
Mhm.
And then your authority, depending on what you have, what other center you have defined, it's kind of like, I like to think of it, it's like your daddy. It's like, well, what is it? It's wait until your dad gets home kind of thing.
Ah.
So I'm an emotional authority. And what that means is that I have a defined emotional center. And for those and there's about 51% of the population who has that defined. And what that means is that we literally have an emotional wave. And I think of it like the tides. It comes in and it goes out. It goes up and it goes down. And we are designed to feel all the feelings, all of them, all of the highs and all the really lows and everything in between. And there are actually channels that are keynoted as melancholy. So there are people who literally like their kind of their base level is kind of melancholy. It doesn't mean that you're depressed or there's anything wrong with you, but that you are just like feeling all of the feelings. And so for people with that emotional definition, and that's the biggie, that one, if that one's defined, it trumps all the others, you're an emotional authority. And what it means is for me to make decisions, especially big decisions, I need to kind of feel it out, which could take a few days. It could take a week, and not make decisions from a place of a low and not make them from a place of a high. And that keeps me from entering into things that really aren't for me. So I have this initial right? Like, ooh, that's my strategy. Yes, I want that, or no, I don't. And then there's okay, well, it's a tentative yes. Let me get back to you in a couple of days and confirm it and make sure that it's aligned. And so I help people discover what their strategy and authority is and help them learn how to follow it. Yeah. Because it's an experiment. That's the other thing, is that human design is considered, it's your own personal experiment. So you are your own science experiment, and human design, your chart gives you kind of like the overarching owner's manual. And I like to think of like, so you have two vehicles, you can have two identical vehicles, right? But there's going to be slight differences. You know, where does the clutch connect? You know, how does the brake touch? You know, when you shift, how does it do? When you corner, what does it do? You know, there are slight differences. You may have the same make and model, but maybe it's a different color. Maybe it's a little different. And so you learn how your own particular car drives. So in your own experiment, you can kind of go, okay, well, somebody says this is how their sacral sounds. How does mine sound? How do I know when I'm getting an intuitive hit? How do I know if it's intuition and excitement versus fear? And so it's this experiment where you get to really learn about yourself. So you take your chart as a starting point and then you play with it. And there's no right or wrong. It's like, all right, then how do I fit with this? And so I help my clients learn how to listen to themselves, how to listen to all these parts of themselves as a whole, so that they can learn to trust themselves in a way that they aren't leaning on other people, that they aren't second guessing themselves, that they aren't giving their power away, whether it's to the government, to their boss, to their partner, to their children, to their past memories of what their parents expected, so that they get to know that, like, I am the authority of my life, and me taking care of myself and doing what's in alignment for me, because human design is about helping you know what lines up for you. Yep. If I'm doing what's in alignment for me, that's actually going to be what's in the best interest of people around me, because they're going to get permission to do what's in alignment for them. It becomes this ripple effect. And because it's not in anybody's in anyone's best interest for you to be a martyr, for you to be miserable, for you to be giving your power away and feeling frustrated and blocked by life. Like, who wants to be around someone like that? Because ultimately that's not the richness of who they are. So I'm like really excited to implement human design in how do you take care of your body? Because like it or not, we live in this 3D world and we have bodies. You got to take care of it.
We got them.
Right? And if your body's miserable, it's hard to hear everything else. And it's hard to really tap into your dreams and your desires and what you want to create in the world if it's hard to get out of bed.
Absolutely. Would you say that sacral is the same? Is it the same as intuition, or is it a little bit different when you say sacral?
So in the human design world, your intuition is connected to your spleen.
Oh, I
So
see.
your spleen is the seat of your immunity, and it's considered the oldest awareness center. The
Mm,
spleen is about keeping you alive.
mm,
And so I think there are probably different levels of intuition. So the spleen is going to be more, I think, intuition around what's safe for you,
mm,
whereas the sacral is about, because the sacral is a motor, and
mm,
it's, yes, this is correct for me, because it's not about right or wrong or good or bad. It's,
mm.
is this correct for me? Because what's correct for me, I have energy for. So
Right.
it's like this energetic, like, oh yeah,
Clear.
that fits. We've got energy for that. That's a yes.
Mm. Interesting. That's so interesting. Wow. So how did you go about learning all this? Like, how did you get so good at it? And was it like self-taught or you took a course? Like, how did you really refine this?
Both, and I'm still refining, right? Because there's
Good.
a ton, right? There's like not just human, right? There's human
Mm.
design, but there's design for animals and the planet,
Wow.
cosmology. There's a lot that's in it, and
Wow.
I'm excited to learn a lot. But yeah, books, I've taken courses. I haven't yet taken any courses from any of the official schools, but I've taken
Mhm.
courses from people who've done them. Um, Workshops, I follow people who are further along in their experiment than I am,
Yeah.
and a lot of books, a lot more books,
And
a lot of books.
where did this come from? Like, where did human design come from? Is it something that's separated from astrology or is it completely unique? How did it
It,
come about? And how long
yeah,
ago?
so it's pretty recent. 1984, 1985
Hmm.
is when it came into the world. And this is the part that had me for a while. I was like, I don't know about this. This seems kind of like, is
Culty?
this real? Yeah, well, not even culty. Like, it seemed like it was maybe just made up.
Okay.
And so what it was is there's a Canadian man whose whose birth name was Alan Krakauer. And he was a journalist. He was very pessimistic, and he was living in Ibiza at the time.
Hmm.
And when I say download, this was downloaded into him, but it wasn't like when in the coaching and the spiritual world where we're like, I was taking a bath and I got a download for a new program. Like, no,
Yeah.
it wasn't that. It was bend over, you're taking this and you're taking it now. And it was terrifying for him. He thought it was going to die. He was going to die. It was an 8-day experience. And it was not oh, I got a download. It was like, I got something shoved into me and
Okay.
I didn't know what the hell was happening. And then he spent the rest of his life kind of interpreting it and breaking it apart.
So he wrote
And
it down? Is that what happened? Or he just had it inserted into him, kind of?
he kind of had it inserted into him. The way he describes it, that it was like cellularly implanted into him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and when he describes it, I'm going to have to pause.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to just ask if anybody has any questions.
Yes, you can do that. I'm just checking. My dog is 15 and
Oh.
diabetic and blind, and she's up. I'm just going to make sure she doesn't need to go outside. Nope, she's just laying down. Um, yeah, and so he taught courses, and I think the way he did it was mostly verbally. So he was a manifester, and he did a lot of workshops and classes, and people transcribed his courses and put them in books, and studied with him. And so it was, I'm trying to think, I can't remember right off the top of my head when he passed away, but fairly young.
Mm.
And when you're asking, like, what does it incorporate? It's a synthesis of astrology, of the Brahman chakra system,
Mm.
of the Kabbalah tree of life,
Wow.
biology, physics, the Chinese I Ching,
Mm.
So it combines all of like
Wow.
aspects of all of that. And when you look at a chart, like I could break it down, like there are parts
Yeah.
that like the channels are associated with the tree of life, and the gates are associated with the I Ching, and the centers are sort of associated with the chakras, because most of us are familiar with the 7 chakras.
Yeah.
And in human design, it's 9 centers.
Mm.
So what and then he changed his name. So Alan changed his name after he had this experience to um oh gosh, Ra Uru Hu.
Oh.
And yeah, so people just call him Ra. And what he said is that like in the late 1800s, like 1860s, that humans had a mutation, and that's when we became
Mm.
mind-centered beings. And his like push to share this was kind of twofold. One, that the world is getting ready to shift. We've been under this one background frequency of structure and organization since the 1600s. And if you look, since the 1600s, humanity has exploded.
Yep.
You know, we just reached 8 billion humans this month.
Yep.
And it's really largely due to the structures and organizations that we've had,
Mm.
governments and schools and the systems and all of these structures that have enabled humanity to flourish.
Mm.
Well, in 2027, that background frequency is going to shift to one of more individuality and small community.
Mm.
Um,
So much sense.
and yeah, like we're going to be kind of coming back to ourselves more. And as we shift, we're going to need to know how to trust ourselves, how to listen
Mm.
to ourselves. And then the other part of it was, he's like, human design needs to be for the children, because if you aren't conditioning them to be their not selves their whole lives, they get to be themselves.
Yes.
And how much
Wow.
more powerful would humanity be if we are actually the beautiful
Nourished.
selves, right?
Yeah.
Nourished in who we came here to be. There's also some like, I don't know, some interesting things, like humanity's going to undergo another mutation, and we're going to have children who are born who are going to look impaired. And they're,
Mm.
he called them raves, that when you get several of them together, they're almost, it makes me think of the Minority Report. Did you ever see that?
Mm. Yes, I
You have like
did.
the 3 together, and it was like they were a super mind.
Yeah.
It makes me think of that. And the way he describes raves is that they're going to be basically helpless alone. But when
Oh.
you get several of them together, they're going to be like a superhuman. And
Oh.
I don't know what that looks like. He's not saying that they're going to be like Wonder Twin powers, but there's going to be something that is very different, and people are going to be afraid and think there's something wrong with them, and maybe do bad things to them. So his whole
Mm.
push was, we need to teach children how to be themselves, and we need to teach enough people about this so that there will be people to protect these rave children as they're born.
Wow.
Humanity is undergoing constant evolution, and it's microevolution, right? We're not all of a sudden growing 2 heads, but we are shifting. And if you look in the spiritual world, there are a lot more people looking at things differently, you know, looking at things from an energetic point, as opposed to dogmatic religious thing,
Mm.
rather than giving their power away to a religious head.
Yeah.
We're like, where can I connect to it for myself? And I really truly believe that the more we do that, that affects our 3D bodies, which
Absolutely.
then could affect mothers as they're having children, what kind of children they're going to have.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting, there's like sci-fi.
Yes, I'm so intrigued. You made me like just want to like just dive in. And you know what? You need somebody to guide you through this, because I did the thing where I went online and I put my birthday in and I got this crazy chart. And I was like, what the F do I do with this? Like, I want to have a conversation with somebody that has, like you said, journeyed longer into this whole knowledge to be like, okay, what does this mean for me? how does this translate into the way that I live my life, the way that I could elevate myself as a human being to help my own expansion in my individual unique way, right? Like I think you need that. It's kind of like silly to I did the Googling thing, right? And I was like, this is not helpful.
No, there's a lot.
Yeah,
And
it's pretty heavy.
there's different pieces. And as you get deeper, then there's other stuff. And then you look at the other stuff and you're like, well, what am I supposed to do with variables? And if you don't understand like your basics, it can seem really overwhelming. And then you've got little ones.
Yeah.
And so for you to understand, a basic foundation of human design, that helps you be able to support your little ones and know where to allow them to bloom as they are versus putting on conditioning that's going to squash them. And the thing is, we're going to condition each other because, when we're together, it creates new channels, and it shifts. Mothers will feel differently energetically based on the children that they're pregnant with.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, that makes so much sense. So many things you've said are just so aligned for me, especially what I've been specifically thinking about over the last week or two. So I'm so glad you brought this up, but especially with mothering and raising kids and all of this, and I'm trying to really figure out like, okay, how can I make sure that I know, because I can already feel that my son is has obviously my daughters are special too, but they haven't grown into themselves enough. They haven't gotten old enough for me to see those parts of them as clearly as I see my son is like very unique in the way that he sees things, in the way that he looks at structures and builds structures, and the way that his brain works. And in some of those ways are overwhelming or hard because he is very energetically explosive sometimes, but it doesn't matter. I am really trying to be okay, how do I best support him to be his full energetic self? And one of the reasons why I don't want to put him in a school system is exactly that, right? And so you saying this is magical to me because I want to know what those tools are. I want actual practical tools of can I know more about who he is through his chart, or through his chart and a mix of different things where I'm okay, I know exactly how to support him now, you know what I mean? And I just think that's so important because I thought about that for myself. If my parents had looked at just my astrological attributes, they would have just known 100% that I am not the type of person that would do X, Y, and Z. So stop pushing me in that direction, I just feel if there was some curiosity of actually determining what your natural capacities are that you're good at and working with those, as opposed to, are you a productive member of society in the way that society thinks of productivity and efficiency right now? No. Okay, well, that sucks. You're probably going to end up with a shitty job. And if you are, you're going to end up with a great job. It's just so black and white and so just awful.
Yeah.
I'm not blaming my parents, but I'm just saying that that's kind of how a lot of us were raised, right? And so I just think it's beautiful that we, without getting too without getting too hard on ourselves about it and approaching it from a place of curiosity, I just think this is just such a beautiful time. And it makes sense that human design is something that's really becoming huge right now, is because it's all making sense. Parents are wanting to support their kids in this way. People are needing to go inside to be their own medicine, to be their own no one's going to rescue you but yourself, basically, is kind of what you and I are kind of in alignment on. That is that we are our own teachers. We can go inside to find the answers. We can go inside to find our own alignment. All of that is just so clear to me and so important right now, and where the direction of the world is going. And so fascinating, just everything you said about kind of the sci-fi elements. It's wow, it was a much bigger conversation than I realized it would be, and I love that. I love it when it's holy shit, this is deep. I love it.
It is, yeah. And there's so much to it that every time I look, there's bodily parts and functions associated with each center, in addition to amino acids and other, other parts. So to be able to look and go, it's science fiction, it's spiritual, it's woo, it's science, there's like the genetics and the biology of it and the physics of it. And it's really fascinating, and it's not meant to be a limitation. I mean, yeah, we do have limitations, but to say, like, I hear different things. So there are 5 types. There are reflectors, which have no centers defined. There are manifestors. They're the ones who they don't have a sacral, defined sacral. They've got a motor to their throat. They're the ones who are they're the ones that can go out and kind of make things happen. You have your projectors, which are your guides. They're the ones who like really see into you. Like they're Ra even said, like, they're the ones that we're going to really need to lean on. And they're about 20% of the population. Reflectors are like 1 to 2%. And manifestors are about 7%. And then you've got the 2 generator types. And each type has its kind of own way of moving through the world. But there are people that will say, well, projectors don't have a defined sacral, so they shouldn't have children. No. Or because a projector who maybe doesn't have any motors, so there are 4 motors in the body, well, they shouldn't work. Like, no. Work is going to look different for people. And allowing people to kind of figure out for themselves what all of that looks like. So there are those who are out there who take a little bit of the information and go, oh, well, you're a generator, so you have to work for other people. No, it's been used like that. And just because you have a defined sacral, it's like your Energizer Bunny battery. It doesn't mean that you don't get rest. It doesn't mean that you can't have periods of time where you're just like, I'm just chilling. And so it's not like you're this, so therefore you must be this. It's like, no, here's a starting point. And each of us are an individual. Each one of us has our own unique frequency. And so the idea, at least for me, the way I see it, is that when you learn your design and you start to get a grasp of it, it gives you permission to listen to it, to follow it, and to play with, okay, what works, to try things out and to make mistakes, to ignore a nudge and go, oh, well, that's what that nudge feels like. That's okay. Or to leap when people are like, what the hell are you doing? You're like, my sacral said, go do this. My sacral said, yes. Right. And
yes.
Yep, I got to fuck yes, it's time to do this. And people are like, but you're moving across the country with 2 days notice. And you're like, yeah. I am. And to be able to play with that and not, and not have this feeling of, well, I have to do this because this is the right way to live my life. Nobody wins life. There is no right way. People have it, and we've been raised this way, that you're born, you go to school, you get good grades, you go to college, you get a good job, you buy a house, you have your 2.5 kids, you get a mortgage, you get your car, maybe you get a master's, you save up for retirement, you take a vacation a year if you're lucky, and you work really hard until retirement. And then it's like, okay,
then you're
that's
done.
not the way to live life. That is a way. There are people who get into their lives and have no retirement, and they figure it out, right? The idea of retirement in and of itself is kind of crazy, because why do you retire? You retire from a job that sucks your soul. Because you need to do this to pay for your mortgage and your student loans and your kids' college and all of these things, as opposed to, what am I doing that brings me fulfillment and a feeling of success and joy in life? And how do I contribute in a way that is my own unique expression, that is a contribution?
And that you don't feel like you ever want to retire because you're having so much goddamn fun.
Exactly. And you're not beaten up and sick and dealing with heart disease and cancer because you've literally been having it sucked, your
Yeah.
soul sucked out of you because you're miserable for so long.
Yeah.
Like, and if you look at the way our society's set up too, that older people, they retire. There's a large percentage of men who pass away within a year of retirement because
Wow.
they have a purpose.
That's not
Our
surprising to me. Yeah.
no, our purpose is not our job. And that's, so you check in, that's my package.
Sounds good. Sounds good. All right, ladies, if there are any questions, I encourage you to post them in right in this Facebook thread where you're seeing this video. I'm not seeing any questions right now, but I am going to keep refreshing to see if I do. And if I do, I am going to ask them.
Okay. All right.
So far, I'm not getting any questions, but I do have a question for you to kind of sum up because this is amazing. And yeah, I'm like in love with this whole conversation of like, yeah, let's just, and it's easier said than done, forget the social constructs we were brainwashed with and create our own unique blueprint for what it is we're here for. Like that is like just a beautiful conversation. It's a huge conversation, and it's, like I said, a lot easier said than done, right? You could say like live your purpose in your unique way, but it takes so long for us to deprogram and to figure out like what the hell is that. And I'm on that journey, and I've been deep in that journey, especially in the last couple of years where I feel like it's accelerated for sure. But I'm still figuring it out, and I don't know if we're ever really done figuring it out. But I feel like what you do is such a huge piece of the puzzle, because we can just, like you said, take a deep breath and be like, it's okay to be me, and it's okay, not only okay, but no one's going to do this thing, and no one's going to live life. No one's going to do what I am here to create. So why the fuck am I not creating the thing that I'm meant to do in this life? And so that's just a hugely important conversation that I'm going to keep coming back to day in, day out. But I would love to know how people can work with you.
Yeah. Before I do that, I do want to speak to your time when it takes a while. So in the human design community, we say it takes 7 years to really get to a place of deconditioning.
Wow.
Because it's not just, right? Because it's not just this thought or idea. It's like
your
getting,
body.
we talk about embodying. It's a shift in your cells. It's a shift in your energy. So it's one thing to think, oh, okay, well, I have an undefined heart. I don't have to prove myself. I don't have to prove my worth. So, okay, good. Well, you have all of this habits and patterns and things that are literally in your body that it takes practice and commitment over time to literally shift that, which I think is interesting that they say it takes 7 years, because there's also kind of a consensus that you have a new body every 7 years, that it takes that long for all of the cells, your bones, your organs, your skin, your muscles. From 7 years ago, you were not the person you were 7 years ago, because you have basically a new model. And that said, what you put in is what you're going to create and get out. So one of the things that my trainer and I have talked about a lot is that, as we get older, there's a tendency to have this mentality of, well, I'm older, so I'm going to get weaker. I'm going to get sick. I'm going to do blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Well, most people's habit patterns are, I go hard, eat whatever I want, exercise sometimes when I'm younger, and I keep that pattern up. As what you're doing is you are creating a new body that's been fueled with junk, that hasn't moved in a way that was supportive in growing muscle and training the body to be flexible and resilient. And you haven't been putting things in your brain and teaching your brain again to be strong and resilient. So it's not a foregone conclusion that as you get older, that you're going to be weaker and feeble and all of that. it only is that conclusion if that's how you've been treating it. So if you are looking that every day you're depositing into your new body, you've got to look at like, what's the quality of what you're depositing? And if it's
Absolutely.
crap, then of course you're going to end up with crap.
What are the seeds you're sowing?
Exactly. 100%.
Yes.
So, yeah. So as far as people working with me, right now I'm, for the most part, am focusing on my one-on-one clients when it comes to sharing, human design, because I get an opportunity to really like delve into it with them.
Yes.
I do have some courses that are coming up. I'm going to do an introduction to human design course probably this next month, just to kind of help people like to break it down so people know how
Awesome.
to read their chart. And but people can reach out to me via Facebook or Instagram. I'm working on behind the scenes tech. I've got some people helping me with that, so it'll be a little easier. But for now, you can absolutely reach out to me via the Facebook. I do have a Facebook group that is called Awakening Exceptional Women, because I like exceptions. For me, it's about stepping out of the rule. Because rules aren't bad. It's just, when we follow rules that people hundreds of years ago made up that don't know us and don't fit us, then maybe that's not a good rule.
Let it go. Let's get a new one. Let's create our own rules.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's so beautiful. Thank you, Amanda. This was like a badass conversation. And this is the kind of conversations that I want to have, because surface level is just too boring for me. This is the kind of shit that I want to be talking about, because the world is absolutely going in a new direction. Structures are breaking down and new ones are being created and co-created. And so where are you? Where are we in this future creation? Like, what is our place? What is our unique place in these new structures that are being built up and created by us, right? And so I think it's an exciting thing to think about. It can be overwhelming for some people, but I think it's exciting to think about, where do we fit in this new reality that is being co-created by us, and how do we utilize our best capacities and the best versions of ourselves and our unique selves to elevate ourselves, our families, friends, the world, all of it, right? Like, it's a huge conversation, and I can definitely see how human design plays just such a huge role in helping people really just be okay with who it is that they are, but also use that to help them elevate and expand into this like beautiful new world that's being created.
Yeah.
Ah, thank you so much. Any last
Thank
words for
you.
these awesome women in this group?
Oh my gosh. Well, you said something about being overwhelmed. Rather than trying to take everything on at once, life doesn't happen all in one day. And we didn't get here all at once. It was a lot of little things over time. And if you want to shift something in your life, if you want to be more authentic in who you are and what you want, pick one thing. Just pick
Mhm.
one thing and focus on that for a month, a couple of months, and allow yourself to actually be with something and take time. That, in this day and age of instant gratification and, sound bites, allow yourself to deepen into something, just like one thing at a time, because 1% change over time is a massive change. It's when you're trying to do all of it all at once and bouncing back and forth that you find that you don't move. So a 1% change, a 1% move can move mountains. The Grand Canyon in the United States was a 1% change over time. It was a little trickle that made the difference. And just allow yourself to be, no matter how long you are here on this planet, like, just do one thing that like serves you, and let that be enough, because who you are is enough.
What a great conclusion. You are enough and you're a badass. All right. Signing off here. I'm going to post all of Amanda's links on how you can follow her and work with her down below. And yeah, you can find all of her information there. And I definitely encourage you to follow her. Thank you so much, Amanda.
Thank you. This is an honor.
Okay, we have stopped the